Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Fantasy Baseball. I'm John Kuh, and I'm joined by Patrick Fitzgerald. Before we get into it, just a happy July 4th, of course, to everyone who's celebrating. Hope you had a safe and fun 4th. But yeah, Patrick, how are you doing?
Hey John, I'm doing okay. On the baseball front, Orioles have me, just about ready to give up on the season. Hopefully, make some good trade deadline moves. Fantasy side, pretty good. I'm coming to you today as a slightly frustrated Chris Sale, Spencer Schwellenbach, and Chase Burns owner. That's a
Oh,
tough
yeah.
trio that I won Chase Burns in my RotoWire OC bid, and I one at this point can be put in quotation marks because of what he did on Monday against the Red Sox, but hopefully he figures out the tipping thing and kind of strings together a few good outings.
Yeah, he went from a guy who struck out the first five batters to just giving up 5 runs in the first inning. It's very swingy, I'm sure, of an
Yeah, tough way to
experience.
start off the week for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of commiserating with you in the whole baseball front because the Twins just dropped 2 games to the Marlins.
Mm.
And I've been telling myself, hey, the Marlins are actually like a decent team. Like they're only 3 games back of the Twins in terms of record, but no, it doesn't feel good to basically drop 3 games or 2 games to essentially a quad A team. And it's only about to get harder for the Twins. So yeah,
Yeah,
it is getting to the moment where it's like, oh boy, I kind of feel okay with the Twins being in a little bit of a sell mode, which you never love to be as a fan, but sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures.
yeah, it feels like they're finally getting healthy on the hitting side, but then the pitching is getting banged up. So hard, just can't get all units, firing on all cylinders at the same time.
Pretty much, it's Joe Ryan and then 4 pitchers with a dream. So,
Joe
well,
Ryan and hope for the best.
yeah, actually 3 right now because Bailey Ober is officially finally on the injured list. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, before we go into a really deadly spiral here, we're just going to jump into this episode. Again, we're covering the latest news and notes around baseball, recapping hitter and pitcher performances from this past week, and of course, streamer recommendations at the end of the show. Before we get into it, just a reminder, you can follow our podcast on Twitter, This Week PL. You can send us your fantasy baseball questions to our email at thisweekplpod@gmail.com. And lastly, make sure that you subscribe to or follow the podcast on whatever streaming platform that you listen to. Again, we're on all of them: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen. Make sure you follow us and leave a 5-star review if you enjoy the show. All right, we are going to start with injury list placements, starting with Dedniel Nunez of the Mets. If you didn't know his name, that's fine. I didn't either, but I found out he has an elbow sprain, and he actually had a couple of holds in his last few appearances. So a little bit of a blow to the Mets bullpen, which actually looks healthier than their rotation because Paul Blackburn just went on the injury list with the right shoulder impingement. Currently on roster resource, the Mets rotation has 3 starters. They did just send Played Tidwell down back to the minors after he actually won his first major league start earlier this week. I would not be surprised if they call him back up again. But they'll probably have to sprinkle a couple of bullpen games in the middle of there because they are hurting. Max Muncy of the Dodgers, currently dealing with a left knee injury. He did undergo an MRI, but the results of that aren't clear yet. But the Dodgers did put him on the injured list. He basically got run into, and so the biggest fear is that it's a torn ACL. But right now, the Dodgers aren't saying what his injury is. Esteury Ruiz was the corresponding call-up. I would not expect him to have much playing time, just bench bat and maybe pinch runner as needed. Jeremy Pena of the Astros got a fractured rib last weekend. He is out through the All-Star break, but he could be resuming baseball activities soon. So expect him to be out maybe just around 2-3 weeks and then back again. Luis Robert Jr. last weekend had a left hamstring strain, but he's already taking batting practice and he's already running the bases as well. So expect a minimum stay for him as well, which probably means he comes back middle of next week. As we mentioned, Spencer Schwellenbach of the Atlanta Braves, he has an elbow fracture, might be out for season. Just unfortunate, really unfortunate season for him. Came into the year as kind of a little bit of a hyped draft pick, and then had a couple good starts. And was he the one that? No, that Hunter Brown that got hit in the elbow. Or was that Schwellenbach?
Yeah, I don't think that was Schwellenbach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
he
probably
was
Brown.
probably like maybe the most steamed up pitcher in draft season, but he was absolutely delivering. So it's a shame to see him go
Completely.
down.
Yeah, I think he was consistently, if not top 30, top 20 in Knicks rankings for most of the year. So, yeah, unfortunate that he's now dealing with a fracture. At least it's not a ligament, right? That's maybe the silver lining here, but it's still unfortunate to see that. Yeah, he's probably not going to be contributing in a major way to your fantasy team anymore. Keegan Aiken of the Orioles. He has a left shoulder inflammation, so he is on the injured list. I believe Yenner Cano was the call up. Not much really to talk there about the Orioles rotation. You're not going to get too much stats out of them, unfortunately. As I mentioned, Bailey Ober of the Twins finally on the injured list with left hip impingement. He was awful through all of June. He gave up 14 homers, which is a record for a Twins pitcher. I'm honestly surprised they didn't put him on the injured list earlier. Zach Eflin of the Orioles dealing with some lower back discomfort last week. Initially, they thought he might just skip his start, but now he is officially on the injured list. Griffin Canning, super unfortunate for him. I think we briefly mentioned this on last week's podcast that he was out of the game. Turns out he ruptured his Achilles. He is now going to be out for season. Christian Moore of the Angels has a left thumb sprain. Not sure if anyone is really rostering the rookie second baseman, but if you are, unfortunately, he's going to be out for a couple weeks. Kerry Carpenter of the Tigers dealing with a right hamstring strain. He actually had a pretty solid outing against the Twins in their I believe last weekend in the series, but then he got hurt, I believe, in the last game. So unfortunate to see there. His teammate Sawyer Gibson-Long going on the injured list with neck stiffness. He already wasn't pitching that great, so I don't know if this is more of an opportunity just to get him some rest, and as well as an opportunity just to maybe refocus and come back a little bit stronger. And then finally, Michael Kopech of the Dodgers, right knee inflammation. Sounds like it's not going to be too long for him, but yeah, just another pitching injury for the Dodgers.
Yeah, some pretty big blows on this list for sure. Going back to the Blackburn thing, Mets have a couple interesting pitching prospects. I think Nolan McLean is maybe one that's worth putting on like an NA spot if you have one. I believe he had 10 strikeouts today in 5 innings in AAA. He's a former 2A guy that hasn't thrown a ton of minor league innings, but I mean they're in a playoff race, so they're going to be looking for all options. The Muncy injury, I wish this like opened up more playing time for Kim, but it seems like I don't think he's really a third base guy, so they're probably just going to lean on like Rojas and Kike, the veterans there, which is not super interesting for fantasy. And then Ober and Eflin are a couple of guys who terrible seasons, right? You can't really sugarcoat it, but they're usually pretty effective when they're on the field. So I do think that they make decent IL stashes, in not super shallow leagues, but maybe like medium depth leagues because obviously you wait and you don't start them their first start back off the IL, but if they're back, hopefully they're healthy and they should be able to deliver some quality like back end innings for you.
Yeah, Eflin had some really solid starts in June as well, right? Like it was mixed in with some pretty bad starts as well, but he's usually a pretty solid guy. I think with Ober, the weird thing is that he's been dealing with this hip thing for the entire season, and he's only finally got put on the injury list after just being awful, like giving up 4 home runs here, 7 home runs here. So I'm curious how rest is going to help him, if it's really going to help reset his mechanics so that he's back as a better pitcher, but. Yeah, both these guys for sure are solid stashes if someone happened to drop them.
Yeah, it might be the type of thing that takes an off season to fix, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, on to some better news, some returns from the injury list. Tyler O'Neill coming back this Friday to the Orioles. He was dealing with shoulder impingement, should slot in probably middle of the order, I think, for the Orioles. Would not be surprised if that happens. Bryce Harper from the Phillies, back from a wrist inflammation. He had been out for a couple weeks, but he was back on Monday and hitting. Shea Langoliers of the Athletics, back from an oblique issue. He actually hit a homer in his first game back, which was kind of frustrating for me because I didn't start him, but it is what it is. He looks to be healthy and ready to go. Jordan Hicks of the Red Sox, that's weird to say. He is activated. He's pitched twice so far for the Red Sox, but he's probably middle infield. I do not think he's going to get many opportunities right now to earn some holds, but with the state of that bullpen and just how hurt it is, and also how poor it is too, Jordan Hicks might become a sneaky holds guy later in this season. Ha-Seong Kim of the Rays, he got activated. His first game will be on Friday against the Twins, actually. And then Jake Berger of the Rangers, he is returning from a left oblique strain. His first game was at the DH position. We'll see if the Rangers kind of shuffle around first base and third base, but it probably doesn't really matter for fantasy purposes because he already has that position eligibility. So honestly, it's probably better for managers that he just DHs and is able to save a little bit of the wear and tear on his body, but he also hasn't been that good of a batter anyways. So, yeah, Jake Berger, at least he's back, but I don't really know if he has any value besides AL only leagues, I don't even know.
Yeah, we're worth keeping an eye on to see if he can get back to that power potential that he's flashed past years. And then I think Hicks is this is I guess more for saves leagues, but it's getting to that time of year right where Aroldis Chapman gets traded. Right, that's kind of been his role the past few years. The team signs him and they trade him, and the Red Sox aren't quite in contention. So he could be on the move, and then there's going to be saves available in Boston. So I think Hicks, he's not maybe worth stashing in our shallower leagues, but at least keep an eye on how he's doing. If he is stringing scoreless outings together, then he could be the guy who steps up if Chapman, goes to a different place.
Yeah, his only real competition right now is probably Garrett Whitlock. In terms of guys like Justin Wilson is pitching, but he also is kind of hurt. And then people on the injured list. I mean, Liam Hendricks is on the injured list. Justin Slayton's pretty much almost out for season. I actually would not be surprised if he is out for season. So there's not a lot of people that are blocking him from getting saves if Chapman does get traded.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to just some injury updates. We're going to start with Bo Bichette. He's been out for 4 straight games with right knee discomfort, so just keep track of him if that ends up being an IL stint. Chas McCormick of the Astros dealing with an oblique injury. He is starting a rehab assignment in AAA. Ezekiel Tovar of the Rockies, he is also dealing with an oblique injury, but he is running the bases, should start a pretty short rehab assignment soon. Not sure if he's going to be returning before the All-Star break, because that is about a week and a half away, but that is something to monitor. Yordan Alvarez of the Astros, he got injections in his hand, but he seems to be feeling okay. That's at least what he's saying. But there's still no timetable for his return. Sean Manaea, as we mentioned for the Mets, just that rotation's pretty poor right now. He is up to 60 pitches in his most recent rehab start, which was on Wednesday, but it wasn't very good. But honestly, it's just more, I think, for him building up rather than seeing the results right now. Blake Snell of the Dodgers, he is facing live batters, but it's still likely a month before he returns. Spencer Steer of the Reds, he's currently day-to-day after leaving Wednesday's game with a right hand contusion after a hit by pitch. His teammate, Christian Encarnacion-Strand, also day-to-day because he fouled a ball off the top of his foot. So there's a couple guys with the Reds who are hurt right now. Wyatt Langford of the Rangers, dealing with an oblique injury. He is starting a rehab assignment on Thursday. Luis Gil of the Yankees, he had a lat injury kind of during spring training, I believe. He could start a rehab assignment actually next week, but it's still likely a month before we see his season debut. Hunter Green of the Reds, he's got dealing with multiple injuries. I believe it's like a groin injury and a knee injury. He did throw a simulated inning on Wednesday, so he's starting to feel good a little bit. Jordan Westberg of the Orioles, currently day-to-day with a finger issue. He's kind of frustratingly sat for 5 straight games. He sat for 8 out of the last 10 games for the Orioles, but he seems to be refusing a trip to the injury list and just trying to gut it out. Noelvi Marte of the Reds dealing with an oblique injury. His minor league rehab is going well so far. He's played a whole game in the field, so would not be surprised to see him return next week before the All-Star break. Stop me if you heard this before, but Brandon Woodruff of the Brewers is scheduled to make his season debut on Sunday. Of course, if he doesn't get injured between now and then. But he did get up to 82 pitches in his last rehab start. So he's at least fully stretched out, but we'll see what this version of Woodruff looks like on the mound. Tyler Glasnow of the Dodgers, he had another rehab start on Thursday, got up to 66 pitches in this last one. So maybe one more start and then he comes back. And with the schedule of the season, it may mean that he comes back after the All-Star break. Maybe just give him a little extra rest there. Nolan Arenado of the Cardinals, day-to-day with a sprained right index finger. He's not planning to go on the injury list, but he has missed 2 games so far. Jacob Wilson of the Athletics, I should say, American League All-Star starter, Jacob Wilson. He's currently day-to-day with right hamstring soreness, has missed 2 games so far. Zebby Matthews of the Twins, he threw a 20-pitch bullpen session on Sunday. I would probably expect him to come back probably after the All-Star break, after getting a couple of rehab starts. Shea Weaver of the Guardians, he is actually still in the league, surprisingly. He's facing live batters after throwing 3 bullpen sessions last week. He, of course, is coming back from Tommy John surgery. Yu Darvish of the Padres threw a simulated game last week and then had a bullpen session. He said he felt pretty good after that one, so would not be surprised if he starts a rehab assignment soon as well. Comes back probably after the All-Star break. And then Matt Chapman of the Giants, he's starting a rehab assignment tomorrow on Friday. Expect that to be a pretty quick stint for him and coming back to the team. And then finally, Chris Sale of Atlanta and Tyler Mahle of Texas, both were moved to the 60-day IL just as procedural moves, but it does kind of solidify that they are not going to be back for a while. But yeah, a lot of updates here. A couple big pitching names I think that are we've been talking about a lot, but could be coming back soon, maybe after the All-Star break. But yeah, looks like reinforcements are maybe on the way for some of the rotations.
Yeah, yeah. Bieber, Darvish, Matthews. I think those guys are all, good pitching stashes. If they're not stashed already in your leagues, obviously the higher end guys already are. Woodruff definitely a still ill situation. His most recent AAA start, velo is still down like 2 to 3 ticks, so I'm not quite sure what to expect from him. Westberg seems like it's going to be a finger thing that kind of bothers him the rest of the year. Hopefully, it's not a broken finger like the William Contreras thing, but it does sound like it's not necessarily going to go away in the short term. And then Darvish, the Padres are being weird with him. They're like, oh, he might start on Sunday, maybe not. We're not going to tell you. So maybe he'll be back, or maybe it'll be after the All-Star break. It's kind of hard to say at this point.
Yeah, and frankly, with Darvish being the age he is, I'm sure the Padres are just like, well, if he's good to go, we'll just have him start. So their pitching rotation could also use some help as well. They've kind of run through a couple AAA guys in the last couple months. All right, looking at some other player news, Luis L. Ortiz, who we've talked about quite a bit as a streamer the past few weeks. Unfortunately, he is now onto paid leave due to an MLB investigation regarding gambling. Potential some issues there. JURICKSON PROFAR, he is back after serving an 80-day suspension due to PEDs. He had a pretty solid year last year with the Padres, was able to turn that into a pretty decent contract this year before getting suspended. He batted fifth in the lineup, and he hit a homer in his return. So Profar, kind of an interesting pickup. I don't know if I'm immediately going for him just because of how weird last year was and how good he was, and that compared to kind of the rest of his career. But he could be an interesting pickup in some 15-team leagues or maybe even some 12-team leagues that have 5 outfielders if you're looking for a guy to fill a slot there.
Yeah, I think he's a good option in the fives. I think the 3 outfield leagues with 12 teams is where it starts to become, maybe leave him on the wire. Big, needed for that Atlanta lineup, though. They have Michael Harris and Ozzie Albies in the tank, and Marcell Ozuna is like playing through a hip tear, and he's been absolutely horrible the last month. So they need all the reinforcements they can get, especially with all those starters going down.
Yeah, it was kind of fun when they had like the beginning of the season where you're like, oh, these kind of backup outfielders might have a shot, right? You had like Alex Verdugo and was it who was the other guy?
Eli White.
Yeah, and then there was like some post high prospects, and then a month of the season, you're like, oh, that's right, these guys aren't that very good. And when Acuna came back, you're like, oh, right, this is what this game is supposed to feel like. So
Exactly.
yeah, they're probably pretty happy to have Profar back.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, that is it for the injury news. A lot of stuff there, but we are going to hop right into player performances, starting with Friday the 27th.
Yeah, so Friday the 27th, Justin Havelock was on our hitter recap. It was Steer into the skid, which was a shout out, of course, to Spencer Steer, who clocked 3 homers on Friday. I am going to talk about Steer, of course, of the Reds. I believe first base outfield eligibility in most formats, but on the day he went 3 for 4, 3 homers and 4 RBI. So 2 solo shots and a 2-run homer. And after a rough start to the season, he rode the hat trick to victory at home in Great American, 98.4 mile per hour exit velo in the second, and then 2 homers over 100 in the fourth and fifth, so 3 homers in the first 5 innings. Going a long way towards, rostering Steer with a little bit more confidence, but it seems like an open question if he's worth buying back into right now. He had back-to-back 20 home run, 15 steal seasons in 2023 and 2024, but things kind of started to unravel in the second half of last year, and then he was a little banged up to start this season and seemingly never got going until this 3-homer game. So he's a guy who in the past has been in like a well-rounded, positionally versatile player for us the past couple of years. He used to even have like second and third base eligibility, which he usually doesn't carry in most formats anymore. And this 3-homer game almost got his season-long line up to league average. So that kind of tells you how much he was in the tank before. So as a guy who's kind of done it and been a good fantasy contributor before, does this big game have us buying back in, or do we think that, that he's just kind of going to continue to be a roughly league average, maybe slightly worse hitter and not bring a ton of value on our shallower fantasy teams?
Yeah, I mean, some weird stats with Steer. Striker rate's kind of gone up by 4%. He was around like a 21% strikeout rate guy, but now he's at 25% this season. Walk rate's gone down a lot. He was like a 10, 11% before. Now he's at 7%. And maybe part of that he's trying to sell out for power a little bit more, which is kind of weird playing your games in Cincinnati. Like you don't need to sell out that much, I guess. But he is pulling the ball a lot more, 47% compared to 44% last year. So uh, I think maybe that change in strategy, I mean, it's not paying off. He only has 7 homers this season. It's probably not going to get to 20 like he has last year. But he still could be like a mid 200s average and maybe finish with like a 15-15 season, maybe with like 60 to 70 runs and RBIs. I think like when I think about that type of player, it's hard for me to really validate that he's a guy that I want on my roster, especially when you consider 3 of those homers that he's had was just in this one game, right? Other than that, then he's had 4 homers over the course of this entire season. So, yeah, I don't know, just some weird numbers from him this season, and I don't know if I'm really ready to buy in based on this one game.
Yeah, I'm kind of tepid on him too. Projections usually aren't super optimistic about him, and I kind of, for the most part, respect that projection. And also, yeah, I think he is like a shallower league guy you have on your bench and maybe plug him in when he's at home and you need a body or yeah, I think he's worth rostering. I don't think he's a huge contributor, but I do think he's worth having just because he does have a decent power speed blend. Also, it looks like he's just getting attacked in the zone a lot more, which has led to the drop in the walk rate and the increase in the strikeouts, like you were talking about. So, pitchers are not really necessarily pitching around him, or they don't have a lot of fear about the 20 homer pop that he's shown in years past. Maybe that'll change after he strung a 3 homer game together, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that is kind of an interesting metric to look at. 45% zone rate last season, 51% zone rate this year. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a big jump.
yeah, it's definitely a big difference.
Yeah, we'll see on Steer. Not still kind of tepid, honestly. On the pitching side, another guy who's kind of maybe like an analogous Spencer Steer on the pitching side. Like a steady contributor who's not super flashy. Merrill Kelly of the Diamondbacks. The SP roundup on this day was who needs a Nicky Mart, which is of course a shout out to Nick Martinez's no hitter or near no hitter. Sorry, took it into the ninth but couldn't get it done unfortunately. But I'm going to talk about Merrill Kelly on this day. Not a great outing. 5 innings, 3 earned, 6 hits, 1 walk, and 7 Ks against the Marlins. So kind of a mid-tier offense. 14 whiffs, 28% CSW on 88 pitches. A lot of change-ups from Kelly was what Nick saw on the breakdown here. Singled out a little bit, in terms of just a lot of balls finding holes. Even though he did really spot pretty well, which is what we're used to from Kelly. And we did get 7 strikeouts with not great but not terrible ratios. Kelly has kind of been a rock in the middle to back of your rotations this year. If you added him or got him with a super late pick, you're thrilled with what he's done. But I did just want to highlight a little regression we've seen from him lately. Last 22 innings, which covers 4 starts, he's given up 12 earned, so ERA around 5 with a 1.45 WHIP. But his season-long ratios are still pretty good: 3.55 ERA and a 1.09 WHIP, which is exceptional. So he's a guy who is definitely a Toby, classified in years past. He's showing a little bit more upside than that this year, but he also seems to be coming back to earth. So are we feeling like now's the time to jump off or sell high, or we just, think this is kind of the normal bumps in the road you get with a pitcher like Kelly?
Yeah, I was actually kind of in the last couple weeks was trying to maybe buy into Kelly a little bit, like trying to trade for him, but I was never able to get the deal going. I don't know. I feel like the whip's a little deceptive. He's got a 1.09 whip, and yet the walk rate is and the walk rate's 7%. But you look at his walk totals, kind of the last couple games. It's like 3 here. He's had 3 in like the last 4 games, twice in the last 4 games. A couple starts with 2 walks. I don't know. Maybe the command is breaking down just a little bit. So I think that all being said, I would try to sell high on him. I feel like he's very solidly like an SB4 type of guy where, like you said, like really good on your team, like just kind of sets a good floor, I guess, for your pitching for the week. But it's not exceptional. And if someone is looking at those stats and thinking that like, oh yeah, like a 1.09 whip, like I'll take that. But you look at his past few starts and it's not there. Yeah, I don't think I would fault anyone if they tried to jump right now and try to sell him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a reasonable time to sell. I don't think you're going to be able to sell at face value. I don't think managers are going to buy him as a 3.5 ERA, 1.1 WHIP kind of guy. But I do think in quality starts leagues, his value gets a nice bump. He had 18 and 22 and 23. Last year was like an injury shortened season, so not too much to go on there. But I think he's already up to 10 this year. So quality starts format may be a more attractive piece for you to try to sell. Otherwise, I think, you're okay to run him out in there in most matchups, but I do think it's a guy maybe worth, selling. It's kind of a command first profile that we've seen from him, year in, year out. So the upside's not crazy or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a bug that we've got on Pitcher List, but his xERA and his xFIP are identical to his ERA and his FIP right now. So
Oh, wow.
he's like, if those are true, then he is exactly pitching at what the expectations say he should be at, which, I mean, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I do kind of concur with you on the quality starts league, though. It actually might make me want to keep him if I have him in quality starts league, because again, he's got 10 by midseason. Like, usually we expect somewhere around like 15 and 16 from the really good pitchers. So the fact that he has 10 is definitely impressive.
Yeah, and I do think the ERA piece is the more sustainable piece here. He's got a career 3.79 ERA and a 1.2 WHIP. So even if the ERA stays, pretty good, I do think the WHIP's gonna keep kind of getting bumped up.
Yep. All right, moving on to Saturday. Thanks to Kevin O'Brien for the Pasquatch Fever hitter recap article. Of course, referring to Vinny Pasquantino, who had a pretty nice day on Saturday. But we're going to talk about a different first baseman. Gavin Sheets, 3 for 5 with 2 doubles, a homer, a run, and 3 RBI in this game on Saturday. It's been quite the first season for Sheets in San Diego. Again, he had 3 hits in this one, launched his 13th homer of the season. Again, he was released by the White Sox last year, so I don't think there was a lot of hype around him. I think his ADP was like in the mid 500s. But he is now hitting 264 with a 785 OPS and 309 plate appearances, and should be poised to surpass his career high of 15 homers, which he set back in 2022 in Chicago. I think I've said this a couple times on the podcast. I feel like this year's crop of first baseman has left much to be desired. I think Pete Alonso, obviously, doing work by mashing homers, but other high picks like Vlad and Matt Olson are just kind of having years that aren't super impressive. And then other guys like Cody Bellinger, Freddie Freeman, Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, again, those are names that were great, 5 years ago. Freddie Freeman actually, again, pretty solid, but I think all 3 of those guys are kind of struggling to maintain, top 10 first baseman status. So Sheets is in here. I mean, he's not necessarily any better than those 3 names that I mentioned, but if he continues on the same pace for the second half of the season, is that someone who we should be considering every day as an everyday starter, even in 12-teamers? Is first base that shallow that a guy like Gavin Sheets is worth considering in those types of leagues?
Yeah, I mean, what I can say is I'm considering him. I have him in a 12-team Yahoo league, 3 outfield. OPS is added as a category, so it kind of rewards like maybe power guys a little more, I guess. Yeah, I kind of been working with a revolving door at first base right now. I foolishly dropped Yanni Diaz. Really regret it. I don't know why I did it, but I did. So it's been like between Alec Boehm, Alec Burleson, Gavin Sheets, guys that I'm rostering 2 out of 3 of them right now. They all seem a little interchangeable. Sheets is in a little bit of a cold spell right now, and it seems like maybe he's regressing, but he's hitting like 5th every single day in the Padres lineup, which is a good, not great lineup. So I think that at least offers him a decent floor, not to mention the positional versatility. So ideally, you're not relying on him as an everyday first base starter in your shallow leagues like I might be, but I think if you're looking for an option, he's not the worst one. He had a few bad years, really mediocre production, and he has changed things, right? He's lifting the ball more, he's barreling the ball up, a little bit more with just also more hard hit balls. He's a big guy. I've actually met him before. He's a really physically imposing guy. So I was always surprised at how little power he hits for. So it's nice to see him like tapping into that a little bit. So I do think it's maybe not wholly sustainable what he's done so far, but I do think he's gonna have a career season.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with a revolving door first base in one of my leagues where it's like Michael Bush, Ryan O'Hearn, who again is streaky here and there. Nick Kurtz, I think, has dropped in a little bit at first base, and then yeah, it's just been kind of rough trying to figure out what to do with first base there.
But those aren't bad options. That's a lot better than what I got going on.
Yeah, that's it. It is like a
all 3 of those over.
Yeah, it is a 10-teamer, so like the waiver wire is a little bit better, but yeah, still it was kind of like, man, first base is kind of rough right now. Usually expect like even like the 10th guy to have like 15 homers or something like that, but yeah, definitely an interesting position this year.
Yeah, it's gotten caught up to by some of the other positions in recent years for sure in terms of like fantasy output.
Yeah. All right, looking at pitchers, thanks to Nick for the I Am the One Who Rocks SP Roundup article, we are going to talk about Kumar Rocker. 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 4 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts earned him the cover boy status. He's shown off a new cutter, in case you haven't seen Nick's SP Roundup articles. It's been a key pitch for him, as in 3 of the last 4 starts, it's actually been his primary pitch at over 40% usage. In this game, it had a 20% swinging strike rate, and he didn't give up a hit on 4 balls in play. The challenge for Rocker is pretty much every other pitch besides his cutter. His sinker and his four-seamer have some merits, but the problem is he doesn't really command the sinker super well, and the fastball shape on the four-seamer is fairly poor, so much so that it's more, Nick would describe it as a surprise pitch, rather than any sort of actual pitch to earn, whiffs or called strikes. His secondaries also really aren't that great in inducing whiffs either. I think he's got a changeup, a curveball, and a slider, but none of them are really a good knockout punch. I believe in this start, actually, he was in an 0-2 count, and he just chucked up a curveball that I believe got taken for a homer. So, unfortunately for Rocker, it's like he's got one really good pitch that seems to be working, but he's got 5 pitches that are like all right, but not great. So, with all that being said, he's at least looking like a pitcher who could be making strides to not be stuck on the waiver wire, right? All you need is maybe one of those fastballs to be commanded well. All you need is one of those secondaries to really become a good whiff pitch, and all of a sudden you're a guy with 4 pitches that can do really well. Is he someone that you would consider kind of a premium streamer right now, or is the lack of consistency in his pitches, besides the cutter, still make him someone that you're hesitant to pick up?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I don't know if I'd say premium, but the name value that he has makes it so that you can't really wait around and see how he does. Because if Kumar Rocker strings 2 or 3 good starts together, people are gonna, add him as fast as they can. So I think he's a streamer, and I think that he has maybe a little more upside than your standard streamer, especially with this new deeper arsenal. So I think that he's an interesting name. It's interesting to see how he's pivoted from college. He was like a hard fastball, power breaking ball guy, and he would just mow lineups down. And now he's like a pitchability, like 5 pitch mix guy. So it's cool to see that evolution. So yeah, I think I'm maybe not as excited about him as some other people, but I would also say that the line that he's put up this year, he's just had a ton of bad luck. Like he's not a 6 ERA guy, right? He's probably more of a 4 ERA guy. He has like a 360 BABIP, 64% left on base rate, right? Like those numbers are bottom of the barrel, and I think that he's going to get a lot of regression in his favor. So yeah, I think he's a watch list guy for sure. Looks like going into the All-Star break, he's San Diego this week and then LA Angels next week. Angels can hurt you, but they also strike out a lot, so it might be a nice spot to go with him there.
Yeah, in his last 3 starts, again, he's gone 6 innings, 2 earned runs, which was this one, 5.1, 2 earned runs, and then 5 innings, no earned runs, 6 strikeouts, 4 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts. So like something is kind of being put together where he's becoming somewhat of an average pitcher, but yeah, it's not something that necessarily screams confidence to me right now. But yeah, unfortunately, like you said, because of the name recognition there, I mean, being a former top pick, he's just a guy who, like, all of a sudden, if he strings together like 2 really awesome starts, he's going to be off the waiver wire super quick.
Yeah, I will say I like him better than his teammate, Felly Vandy guy, Jack Leiter. I'm just not the command just does not seem major league ready right now, and it's leading to a lot of abbreviated outings. So I think I'd go Rocker over Leiter.
Yeah, which is unfortunate for the Rangers because, I mean, those 2 picks looked like really great picks, right? Being able to take advantage of the Mets not signing Rocker that first draft year and then actually grabbing him in the second year. Both, they were like, hey, this could be the cornerstone of your rotation for the next, 5-10 years.
Yeah, still a lot of time. They can learn from DeGrom and Eovaldi, a couple, really successful vets, and kind of build from learning from those guys.
Yeah.
So going to Sunday the 29th, Jazz Hands was our hitter recap from Johnny Gordon. I'm not going to talk about Jazz Chisholm, though. I'm going to talk about Sal Frelick, outfielder for the Brewers. He was 3 for 5 with a homer, solo shot. And, it's notable when Sal Frelick hits a homer because he's not really a power guy. He has a 85 to 86 mile per hour average exit velo and a 28% hard hit rate, which is, not the worst in the league, but definitely among them. But he has a really nice batting average floor. He's hitting 296 with a 354 OBP this year. And he actually is slugging just over 400. So he's kind of out slugging his exit velocities a little bit, although the X slug is 360. Frelick he's been hitting at the top of the Brewers lineup every single day for, I think, about the past month or so, which, it takes him from a guy who's completely off our radar in shallower formats to a guy that I think we should be considering. But at what league depth are you starting to consider, rostering and starting it?
Yeah, I have him actually in a 14 team average and OBP league, or I think maybe it's just an OBP league. And it's 5 outfielders. So I'm starting him there every single day because, I mean, he at least contributes in 2 categories, which is super nice. I think if you're in a 12 teamer with 5 outfielders, like that's where I'm considering. I think with three's tough because again, he's like only a 2 category guy in terms of average and stolen bases. He does get like a decent number of other counting stats in terms of runs and RBI, but not a ton to be that impressive. So I think like in 3 outfielder 12 team leagues, he might be on a bench. I don't know if I'm starting him every day, but he's at least if it's an OBP league, I think I am. But if it's an average league, maybe I'm not as crazy about it.
Yeah, I think the 12 team, 5 outfield, definitely lock him in. 3 outfield, I do agree, is the kind of the decision point. I think the hitting leadoff it goes a long way for him though. With the runs, definitely get amped up in addition to the average and stolen bases, which we already expect to be there, and then any power is kind of a bonus. I dropped him in the same 12 team 3 outfield league I was talking about before, but also it has OPS added, and I don't really expect him to be a plus there, even though he's been pretty good so far. So I think that, yeah, in your standard scoring formats, or I guess points leagues, he's a guy who probably racks up points, especially not getting penalized for strikeouts, which I know a lot of points leagues do.
Yeah.
On the pitching side, another kind of underrated guy, and it's the cover boy for Nick's SP Roundup on the 29th. It was Robo Stumps, Justin Robleski. He went 6 shutout innings as a follower against the Royals, I believe. He 3 hits, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts, 8 whiffs, and a 31% CSW on 83 pitches. And you might not have wanted to go with, the Dodgers follower after Ben Kasparias, kind of burned people the day before. But Robleski really came through. He sat 95.7 on the 4-seamer, which is pretty hard from the left side, and even topped out at 99 to dig deep and get a strikeout. 4-seamer was located well, 6 whiffs on 25 pitches thrown, so a nice 24% swing strike rate. And the question with Robleski, we know the fastball is solid, but the secondaries are a little bit, leave a little bit to be desired. He works well against lefties with a slider, but he kind of goes with the kitchen sink cutter change curveball approach against righties that Nick remains a little skeptical of. But he does note that, there's a lot of really good wins opportunities going forward as a bulk reliever. So maybe not a quality starts guy, right? You don't necessarily want to start a guy who has 0% chance of getting a quality start as a bulk reliever, but I think he's getting on our radar as a shallow league win streamer, and maybe even a guy that you hold, if he has a string of good matchups coming up.
Yeah, I think that's just the reality, like of any Dodgers pitchers where the role, and I think for Robleski and Kasparias too, a little bit, right? Like both those guys are going to get the opportunities to get wins, and it's going to come with decent numbers, not great, but decent numbers. And it doesn't look like the Dodgers rotation, as we kind of mentioned with Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell, they're not necessarily getting reinforcements anytime soon. And even I think both those guys come back, they still might do the whole follower strategy. I would not be surprised if that happens. So, yeah, I think he's worth a pickup in a wins league, and I think that's literally the only type of league I would consider him. Like I don't think I'd go for him in a 10-teamer, but I think 12-teamer makes a lot of sense. I think 10, there's just way too many options to get better pitching than stashing a guy like Robleski on your team. But for 12s, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hope that he sticks as the a follower to Ohtani once Glasnow returns. Honestly, think Dustin May deserves to be removed from the rotation. Just if you're going strict performance, he's been the worst one. So I think that hopefully Robleski's shown enough to kind of to keep his spot, because it's a real revolving door there.
Yeah, May is the weird one, I think, though, because he doesn't have any options, whereas I want to say Robleski and Kasparias do.
Hopefully they bump May to like a swingman type role. I feel like he could be pretty effective in that format. Maybe, stuff will play up a little better.
Yeah, he does seem like a guy who, like, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be a really good reliever, but like he's been in that role for the Dodgers for quite a few years, mainly because of injuries. But yeah, they just need him in the rotation right now because they have no other bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, moving on to Monday. Thanks to Christian Oneman for the 15 concentrated power of WILER. Great reference there, Christian. We are going to talk about the title boy, WILER Abreu of the Red Sox. 2 for 5 with 2 homers, 2 runs, and 5 RBI. After breaking out with a pretty respectable 781 OPS in 2024, Wilyer Abreu is continuing to ascend in the Red Sox outfield. He's carrying an 819 OPS through 74 games played this season. His power has also grown in his third season in the bigs. His 16 homers already surpassed last year's total of 15 in just half the plate appearances. And it's also worth noting that he's cut his strikeout rate from 28% to 24% this season. And if you look at his expected stats, the quality of contact has improved. Part of that is because of that 26% pull air rate. Of course, one of those new stats that we get courtesy of StatCast this year. The one caveat about this line is that one of his homers in this game specifically wasn't in the park one. So it still counts. Obviously, it's a great thing. But that is just kind of like, okay, he did technically hit only one of them, over the fence. But that still should not detract from a great night. The second one was a grand slam, so awesome for him. He's rostered in about half of most leagues looking at Yahoo and ESPN, but he is playing like a top 30 outfielder right now just based on the auction calculator. Scott Chu has him ranked 130th right now on hitter list. So with all those kind of stats in play, is Wilyer Abreu like a must roster in 12 teamers, or is he still kind of a fringe guy, kind of like what we were talking about with Sal Frelick?
Yeah, he's a must roster in my book. I'm not saying he's going to pop 35 homers this year like he's on pace for, but I think he needs to be added everywhere. You don't need to start him against lefties. I don't think he plays against every lefty, but if he's starting against a lefty, he has pretty bad platoon splits. But I think every day he's facing a right-handed pitcher. He's a guy who should be in your lineup. He has a nice, well-rounded profile. Like you said, he's pulling the ball in the air a lot, which is allowing him to tap into that power. And compared to years past, he's also being a lot more aggressive in the zone and making more contact in the zone. So, you combine those two things, and that's really allowing him to do a lot of damage. So it's been cool to see, a breakout from a guy that was considered, kind of a solid but not spectacular player, and he's really showing a ton of upside here.
Yeah, and he's been really helpful for the Red Sox too, just as kind of Duran's maybe falling off just a tiny bit, just helping the team overall in terms of batting and bringing that floor up. All right, moving on to pitching. Thanks to Nick for the Max Poetic SP Roundup article talking about Max Scherzer. Don't know if he's completely back yet. He did say he was feeling some little soreness after that start. But we are going to instead talk about Michael Wacha of the Royals going up against Seattle. Got a loss in this one. 5 innings, 5 earned runs, 8 hits, 2 walks, and 1 strikeout. So obviously not a great start here. But I did want to talk about Wacha because he's been a mainstay on a couple of my fantasy teams this year. Mainly because he's just fine, right? He's had a couple blowups here and there, but overall it's been like a decent season for Wacha. The strikeout rate is low, but it's kind of around his career numbers. The whip, even though it's high above 1.2, is kind of around where he was last year. I believe last year he finished with a 1.19 whip. However, that risk might not be worth it in the end, just even being a solid pitcher. He's got some interesting matchups coming up. The Royals aren't that great right now in terms of providing runs, so the win chance is a little bit lower. He's got the Diamondbacks and Mets next, so maybe it's time to move on there. And I think the question for me comes down to there was another pitcher who went on Monday, Ryan Nelson, who we've talked about quite a bit in our streamer section. Nick has Wacha currently at 54th and Nelson at 62nd prior to their starts on Monday. Nelson had a great start on Monday, so there is that. But if you had to choose, who would you take rest of season, Wacha or Nelson?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny juxtaposition because they're both one pitch guys, but for Wacha, it's his super soft changeup, and for Nelson, it's his 96-mile-per-hour heater that's super hoppy. So they kind of have the same recipe, but with a completely different pitch. I think I'd go Nelson, but like just by a hair. I think it depends on your league format too. Like if you're playing in something super deep where Walker's stability is a little bit more valued, I would get going with him. But Nelson, I think, has started to flash some really nice stuff. He's mowing down weaker lineups with the fastball. He might get hit a little bit against harder matchups, but yeah, Walker. He got off to a great start, and he's kind of regressed, and he's throwing his changeup less than he has in years past, which is a little puzzling to me. So I think if you're, looking to take a shot with the last couple spots on your roster, I think Nelson's a better target for that.
Yeah, Wacha to me kind of screams like floor, but the floor is kind of getting lower and lower as the season goes on. Whereas with Nelson, it's like the ceiling's pretty high, but now we're starting to see kind of the floor come too. And I think maybe part of that is just we're going to see him more because he finally kind of has a spot with that Diamondbacks rotation. So he's, at least more solidly in the rotation as opposed to a guy that is shuffling up and down between AAA and the big league. So Yeah, I think I'm with you. I like Nelson a little bit more. I think partially because the ceiling is better. You're just going to get more strikeouts with him. But yeah, Waka is kind of slowly coming to the point where he might not be a guy worth keeping anymore, at least in, like 10 and 12 teamers.
Yeah, I mean the 1.26 whip he's got right now, that's a little uncharacteristic for him, but that really drags you down. That's not what you want.
Yeah.
So going to Tuesday, July 1st, turning the calendar over to July. Summer of George with Scott McDermott's hitter recap title. Great Seinfeld reference. So I appreciated that one. I'm going to talk about Roman Anthony. One of the biggest prospects in the game, number one at a lot of outlets in real life and also from a fantasy perspective. Not a crazy game, but just wanted to highlight him. He went 1 for 2 with a double, run scored, and RBI. This was actually in the suspended game, but that's 8 hits in the last 4 games for Anthony, who is slowly heating up after really struggling since he got called up. Scott, you know, isn't projecting, but says that there's upside for a top 50 second half bat here. He only has 1 home run and 1 steal so far, but average exit velocity at the 90th percentile, and he has a 12% walk rate, which is comfortably above average. Scott Blue's greatness is coming. I am a little more tepid, I would say, but just want to get a pulse check on where you're at with Anthony and kind of also juxtapose him with Jack Caglianone, who's really struggled as well since getting called up, and see if there's one that you kind of prefer rest of the season, or if you're a little worried about both for this year specifically.
Yeah, with Anthony, I have him in that same 14 team, 5 outfielder league that I was talking about with Frelick. And I'm not starting him in that one, at least right now. And it's not saying that my outfielders are anything to write home about. I just like 5 of them better than I like Roman Anthony. So even though the numbers are great, I think just the production isn't coming through. So fantasy wise, it's hard for me to kind of get behind him. The role at least is somewhat solidified, right? I don't think he's. I think the only reason he gets sent down to AAA is if he's just doing poorly, right? It's no longer like someone's coming back. He now he gets kicked down to AAA. It's like no, he's just not ready yet for the big leagues, which is fine, right? He's still super young. I think comparing him to Cags, I don't honestly have a good pulse on that either. Like you said, like Caglione, I think he's only had 1 homer as well, right? I don't think he's really show off that power. And he's also actually kind of similar to Roman Anthony. They're both on really not great team contexts, right? Like both of those teams aren't doing very well offensively right now. So it's hard for me to feel good about either of these rest of the season, to be honest. If I'm going to pick one over the other, I mean, the hard hit, the stats behind the stats for Anthony seem to indicate that, like, yeah, this guy's really good, right? The exit velocity that you mentioned. He's got a 12.8% barrel rate, which is insane for a guy who only has 1 homer. So I don't know. I think if I'm just gonna go by just the metrics, I'd probably take Roman Anthony, but I also don't know if I'm really rostering either of these guys in anything more than like a deep league.
Yeah, I don't think you can cut them loose in that format that you described. I'm maybe slightly in towards Cags, but they've both been disappointing. They're also both hitting into a ton of bad luck. I mean, these guys are underperforming their expected stats by a good margin. So it's not like they're just getting the bat knocked out of their hands. That they're making some solid contact and things aren't going their way for whatever reason. One thing about Anthony's profile that I think is interesting is he doesn't chase a lot, which is great, and he walks a lot, but he also is really passive in the zone. He has like probably one of the highest college strike rates in the league. So, it's a guy who kind of like Jackson Holiday, I guess, like he was lauded for his plate discipline, but it's also because he's just not swinging a lot, period. And that's not the type of approach that, is going to work great in the major leagues. You can shoot through the minors and, run 15% walk rates doing that in the minors. But once you get to the majors, guys are really going to challenge you. So that might be an adjustment that Anthony needs to make.
Yeah, I guess one thing about Caglianone, he does have really good metrics as well. I mean, good hard hit rates, good barrel rates. It's just not really resulting in any sort of hits because his average is incredibly low. But yeah, one note about Anthony, like I've seen this before with guys like Edward Julian who like have a really good eye, but the problem is like they only swing at like the perfect thing, right? They don't really try to. They're not like the chase artists where they're like, well, we can, it's not like Luis Arias who like literally swings at anything, can make contact, right? They try to look for that one pitch, and then sometimes that one pitch just doesn't come, and then they're faced with swinging after a little bit poorer pitch and maybe not making the greatest contact. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Roman Anthony, but it is kind of a thing that I've seen with a lot of guys who like have good eyes, is that they like well, they just want to hit the one pitch instead of, trying to, kind of spread it and widen their zone a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's something that Matt McLean has struggled with at times this year too. On the hitting side, Nick's SP roundup was Ed Rising, which was a shout out to the gem from Edward Cabrera. I'm going to go with another kind of, I guess, polarizing guy, but who's seen a lot higher highs than Edward Cabrera. That's Zach Gallen of the Diamondbacks. He went 7 innings of 1-run ball against the Giants on the first. 5 hits, no walks, 10 strikeouts, 16 whiffs, 38% CSW on 101 pitches. So real gem here from Gallen. Nick, of course, ironically notes that he finally bumped Gallen way down the list, almost off it. I think 98th on the most recent edition because of the horrible ratios. And of course, Gallen, comes through with a gem here. A little bit of a blame it on the Giants type situation. Their lineup has been really poor since acquiring Devers, kind of ironically. He's struggling to adjust a little bit. But Nick does note that there was some elements here that did look like classic Zach Gallen. Some good cutters. The curveball dominated down low and the fastball was racking up called strikes. He notes, this could be what, Zach Gallen getting back to the form that, we've seen from him in years past, but it also could be the type of thing where he flashes and then goes back to hurting us. I was looking today, and Zach Gallen is actually the worst qualified starter in the league in terms of ERA, around 5.5 ERA. So are we jumping back in? Are we ready to get hurt again on Zach Gallen, or are we, leaving him for someone else out there to grab?
I think I'm leaving him out. And I think part of it is just like the numbers look so bad that like one start is not really going to change the way I feel about him. And just trying to look at some of the numbers this year of like, what's happening. Like nothing is really standing out in terms of like, oh, this pitch is awful. He's just giving up a lot more homers. That's maybe part of it. And a 1.73 homer per 9 compared to 0.79. Obviously, the strikeout rate's down as well, 22% compared to 25%. So the season-long numbers just don't look good, and I just don't think I can trust one game. Was this away in? Do you know if this was away in San Francisco?
I'm not sure. I think it might have been at home. But
it was at home. It was at home. So yeah, maybe can't necessarily blame it on Oracle Park keeping in some of those homers, but yeah, it's a great start, but I don't know if I'm ready to trust it.
Yeah. I think like shallower formats, you can leave him out on the wire. Deeper formats, if someone is done with him, might be worth scooping and just kind of maybe keeping on your bench so he doesn't burn you and just seeing what he gets to. But I've been kind of out on Zach Gallen since 2023 when he threw 200 plus innings in the regular season, and then Diamondbacks went to the World Series and he took on like 250 innings. And there's not many pitchers in today's game that can handle something like that. And the stuff has kind of fallen off since then. So I'm not saying he's never going to be the same guy, but that's the type of thing that can definitely put a big strain on somebody.
Yeah, and I remember, we had talked about Gallen on the pod a ton of episodes before. So like this is like maybe even like the single digit episodes, and we had brought on, I forget, maybe it was Nate Schmidt to talk about Gallen, and it was kind of the interesting thing with his arsenal is that he kind of has like a 2 arsenal setup. Before, at least, it was like four seam, curveball, changeup, and then he had his cutter slider mix. And then a couple seasons ago, he finally shelved the cutter slider. It was like, okay, we're not doing this. We're not going to come up with 2 arsenals, and he really solidified the 4-seam curveball changeup. And that curveball like has done pretty well for him, actually. Like the swing and strike rates on it have gone up by a considerable amount since a couple seasons ago. But yeah, I don't know if it was just something that messed with him, and the changeup isn't that great right now, but it is kind of weird why all of a sudden this season is like the real season that he starts imploding a little bit.
Yeah, he used to be, I feel like, a super well-rounded pitcher with really good stuff, and he really spotted up well. And now I think he kind of has to be really reliant on the command, and it's produced some pretty ugly game.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Wednesday's game. Green Street Hooligan, the article from Kyle Stanzel, of course, referring to Riley Green, who had a 2-homer day, the day that he was also announced as a American League All-Star. But we're going to talk about Isaac Collins of the Brewers, who's had a really good June. He went 4 for 5 with a homer in this one, 2 runs, RBI, and a walk, obviously in July. So some of these stats aren't going to count towards June. But Mets pitching just could not deal with Collins in the first game of this doubleheader. He got on base 5 times, including his 5th home run of the season. He's, one of these Brewers outfielders that cycles in and out. He's enjoyed a pretty solid first full season in the majors. He's been really good over the past month, hitting 306, 417, 518 with 4 homers and 4 stolen bases. With those numbers, does Colin offer any value rest of the season, or is this just a guy on a hot streak?
I'm kind of inclined to say the latter. I think speed needy teams is worth keeping an eye on him because he's a guy who, consistently stole 20 plus bags in the minors. If he was on any other team and he popped up like this, or most other teams, I wouldn't care. But the Brewers really just kind of have an ability to squeeze the most out of their guys, more on the pitching side, but also sometimes on the hitting side. So I think shallower leagues, he doesn't need to be on your radar a ton unless you really just need steals. I think that, he's an everyday guy and he, has a chance to go 15, 20 steals if he keeps getting that everyday run. He has great plate discipline. His chase rate's in the 95th percentile at 21%. So I think that's really kind of his best hitting attribute besides his speed. I don't think he's going to, keep popping home runs. So yeah, he's kind of a late bloomer guy that I'm typically a little wary of buying in on just because the projections usually dock them a pretty good amount. But yeah, I think this is more of a team need play rather than a must roster situation.
Yeah, he is a switch hitter, but the Brewers don't use him every single day. They do cycle players in and out. So even though he is getting a good amount of playing time for sure, he's not playing every day, which definitely dings his value just a little bit. Even if he is providing a little bit of nice power and speed and decent ratios as well.
Yeah, I guess I had him. I was thinking of him more as an everyday guy, but yeah, if it's more of a 2 out of every 3 or 3 out of every 4 type thing, I think that's a hard profile to roster.
Yeah. All right, moving on to pitchers. Thanks to Nick for the Elevator Mitch SP Roundup article, of course, referring to Mitch Keller. But we are going to talk about Logan Gilbert of the Mariners going up against the Royals. No decision, 4.2 innings, 1 run, 3 hits, 3 walks, and 7 strikeouts. Last week we talked at length about George Kirby, and now the conversation is on Logan Gilbert. He wasn't really able to find whips on his four-seamer here, 2 out of 26 thrown. And he only had 29% strikes on his splitter as well. So the fact that he actually got 7 strikeouts is pretty amazing. But through 10 starts this season, Gilbert is an absolute strikeout machine. He's got a 37% K rate to go with an elite 5.5% walk rate. The whip is also great, 0.95. The ERA is not great. It's like mid threes. I was looking at all starters with more than, I believe it was 40 or maybe 50 innings. He was first in strikeout rate. Right behind him was Cole Riggins. So obviously an elite company there. Tariq Skubal, third, of course, AL Cy Young front runner. But the one thing about Gilbert is he's just not really going super deep into games. Of course, in this one, only 4.2 innings. Since his return from the injury list, he's started 4 times. He hasn't been able to go past 5 innings. And frankly, throughout this entire season, he's only had 1 start above 6 innings, which was his first start where he went 7. So he is getting the opportunity to get wins. Unfortunately, only has 2 on the season through 10 starts. And of course, I think he only has 1 quality start because he hasn't gone past 6. The worrying piece here is kind of twofold for me. He can go deep enough into games to potentially earn a win. Obviously, not a quality start. And the K rate's kind of high. His career rate's like around 26%. So being able to do 37% is kind of nuts. That being said, is that like a reasonable worry? Is that a reasonable concern that he's just not going to get too many quality starts and that the strikeout rate's going to regress? Or is there something about Gilbert this year that says that maybe he could hold on to, not necessarily 37% strikeout rate, but maybe he is like above 30% this year?
Yeah, I mean, the swing and miss is up along with the strikeout rate, so it's not like one of those statistical flukes where somebody's K rate just absolutely pops and they're not actually getting any more whiffs. So yeah, it could be a strikeout bump here for the season. It's interesting because his velo is actually down like a tick from last year, so it's not like he's throwing harder and getting more whiffs. So I think it'll regress a good bit, and you'll see him working deeper into games as a result. He might give up a couple more runs. He's a guy who ERA is probably his like worst fantasy category. He eats innings, right? And he has a career whip below 1.1. So he's almost like George Kirby or like Joe Ryan, but it maybe better than Kirby and maybe similar to Ryan in that he should be able to provide decent volume with good strikeouts, decent ERA, and then the whip is where he really, props your team up.
Yeah, he's got a 1.43 home run per 9. But a lot of that is due to a start that he had I think it was 2 weeks ago where he gave up 3 homers, if I'm recalling that correctly. So even though it looks like he has a home run issue, he's still like not terrible at that in terms of giving up the long ball. Obviously, playing all your home games in T-Mobile helps a lot with that. But yeah, I was kind of shocked by these numbers when I was looking at Gilbert. I was like, 37% is insane. Like he's first place right now in strikeout rate. He is first place in swinging strike rate at 19.2%. CSW 34%. Good for second. Yeah, his numbers are just through the roof right now, and I was not expecting that from a guy like Gilbert.
Yeah, I mean, it might even hint at a higher ceiling down the road. If he's capable of putting together performances like this, then maybe his strikeout upside is even bigger than we thought going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, career 27. Well, last year 27%. Year before that 24%. So yeah, definitely did not see a 30s 30+% strikeout rate in Gilbert.
No, definitely not.
All right, that is going to wrap it up for player performances. Before we head out, streamers, who do we have this upcoming week?
Yeah, so quick recap, just very quickly. Last week, Brian Bayo was the follower in the resumption of the suspended game. He got a win with 5 innings, 2 earned, and only 2 base runners. So great, weird usage, but great result. Ryan Nelson got a no decision, his first start of the week, but was really good. 6.2 innings, 2 runs, no walks, 7 Ks. Bad outing for Jacob Lopez, 3 1/3, no decision, 3 earned. Michael Soroka is going tomorrow. Cade Horton is actually going right now and was Nick's streamer pick of the day, so don't have a live update there. Next week, Nick Martinez, he's kind of borderline, honestly, to even be considered a streamer. 28% Yahoo, 26% ESPN, but still wanted to highlight him. 2 starts at home, not the best venue, but decent offenses. Miami can hurt you a little bit, but Colorado really weak. So a nice 2-start there. If you can pick and choose the starts, I'd mostly focus on the second one against Colorado. Going back to Brian Bayo again for this week, 26% Yahoo, 13% ESPN. Potentially Colorado and Tampa Bay home to start. Definitely going to get Colorado. Might get Tampa Bay depending on how the Red Sox shuffle their rotation. Still a little bit of whip risk like I talked about last week, but that first start is great and you really want it. So if he loses the second one, you're not going to be too annoyed because you got the better matchup. And then also Richard Fitz, his teammate, he's very low owned, 2% Yahoo, 1% ESPN. Same 2 starts, but he's projected to go Monday. So he's almost definitely going to get the 2-start week. He's better for wins leagues because he's not fully stretched out and coming from the IL, and then he was briefly optioned. The suspended game, he was actually pitching, so that kind of got in the way of him getting fully stretched out. And then lastly is Brandon Walter of the Astros, 21% Yahoo, 19% ESPN. He got lit up in Coors today, but I wouldn't really put too much stock into that. He gets 1 start at home against Cleveland, which is one of the weakest offenses in the league right now. Walter is a really good command over stuff lefty, kind of like his teammate Colton Gordon. He has one of the lowest walk rates in the majors, so he's gonna fill up the zone and hopefully should be a good whip guy and then a good win opportunity too.
Yeah, like all these ideas. I think Nick Martinez is the one who's like the one that's scariest because it's 2 home starts, and Miami is like starting to heat up a little bit. But I am a little bit biased to that because Kyle Stowers hit 2 straight homers against the Twins in this series. So yeah, Miami's offense is maybe heating up at the right time, but Colorado is still just an anemic offense, and they're not really going to get anything done. And so that also bodes well for Bayo and Fitz as well to have really good starts against them next week.
Yeah, and Giolito also gets Rocky Road. He's too high owned to be a streamer, but plenty of good starters going against the Rockies on the road next week.
Yeah, would not be surprised. I mean, just check. Giolito might be available in your league. He was available in mine, but granted, it's a 10-teamer, so obviously it's a very shallow league. But yeah, definitely more options besides just the ones we mentioned in your league. Obviously, check what's going on and make sure you have the right matchups. And obviously, check the expected SP schedules article that Patrick puts out every other week, right? You and Wyatt, or no, it's Win McDermott. Yeah, exactly.
So I got this week, and it's going to be a abbreviated one because we don't know how teams are going to use their rotations coming out of the break, but it'll at least break down this upcoming week.
Yeah, definitely check that out. All right, that is it for this episode. Again, happy 4th. Hope it's a good long weekend for all you listeners. You can find us at This Week PL on Twitter. Send us your comments and questions at thisweekplpod@gmail.com. You can find myself on Twitter at the John Cuh and Patrick at @pfitzgerald_99. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Pitcher List podcast feed on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you listen to your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy the show. Lastly, sign up for Pitcher List Pro. By doing so, you can join us in the Pitcher List Discord and get advice from all the fantasy experts and writers over there. That is all for this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of This Week in Fantasy Baseball. For Patrick, I'm John, and we'll see you in the next one. Later, everyone.